101 Constitution Amendment, the compulsion to bring it. What are the issues about it? This is a profile I have it to discuss. But incidentally, because another organization, I think Sandeep Choruria has fixed me for real estate and development. So for today's topic, I'm excluding it. Pure works contract I'll be touching. That's the way I plan myself to address you. Right, sir?
Yeah.
The 46th Constitution Amendment, I will not be dwelling in length, but issues which are there, the industry which suffered it, the scheme of the act, briefly I'll touch and detail it, the issues confronted in the later part till 2016. That is what I'll touch because without touching what happened in the past, it will be meaningless to touch on the GST scheme to find out what is the law today and where the industry is suffering. We will not be able to ascertain. That's the reason I'm now immediately after 46 Constitutional Amendment, for everyone, Builder Association judgment by the Constitution Amendment, that is 73 STC 370 comes to the mind. But as a person, I will say the entire credit should go to the Orissa High Court and to Senior Advocate Mr. D.K. Mahanti, who argued for 2.5 days for BHL judgment reported in 70 STC page 1. There, the constitutional scheme was explained by a division bench. This is where it started. Then the situation shifted to the constitution bench.
ले जाओ तो फिर पलंग पे कर लेगा बोल तो रहा है फिर ठीक है नहीं तो मैं इधर बैठ जाऊं देख ला जानता है अच्छा बैठ कर
अरे विवेक जी वो कीजिए ना म्यूट कीजिए ना आप होस्ट हैं नहीं तो दूसरे को होस्ट बनाइए
Now in Builder Association case, it was a lead matter from the L&T but support given by Builder Association. In most of the works contract matter, they have been in forefront in statutory matters, and this is how it came. 3/2/1983, the judgment was delivered by a constitution bench, and E.S. Venkatraman, Justice E.S. Venkatraman authored it. They have only clarified that by amendment to the constitution, the entire field is not assigned to the state, and the parliament has also got equal right, and CST Act applies. This is why I thought I should make a mention, because immediately after 46 Constitution Amendment, State of Maharashtra brought an act, probably Mr. Joshi can clarify, correct me, where they say entire contract shall be liable to be taxed at 4%. This is how the Constitution 46 Amendment was understood initially. And later on, after a Builder Association judgment, there are three major propositions of law was clarified by the bench. One, state have not been given totality of field for taxing works contract. Equally, it is bifurcated under entry 92A list 1 or 246, 7th schedule. So many states were disappointed on that, and this is how that sale definition, the CST Act was also amended. Most of the states, they brought their own method. There are three propositions that was made very clear in the Builder Association judgment by the Constitution Amendment. Of course, this may not have any bearing for GST, but for comparison purpose, I thought I should just briefly touch on that. One, an individual or turnkey contract by virtue of Article 366(29)(a) by legal fiction has been converted as a divisible. That is the main role it has done. So supply of goods even for works contract, he will be subject to same discipline as it is ordinary sale in a supply contract. This made a sweeping clarification which states were not earlier willing to take it on. Second one, So most of the state, they pleaded before the bench, the entire goods is liable to be taxed under the state act. Supreme Court clarified that there is the conglomerate of the goods is not by itself is liable to be taxed, but goods per se which comes under entry 54. That is the second one. That one. Third one, they said this declare all discipline under 3, 4, and 5 will equally apply to the scheme under entry 54, and the state, when they frame their law, should give importance or consideration to it, and they cannot grab it the totality. This is what, in brief sum and substance, the first decision of BI judgment. Later on, still, there were certain matters were pending in second bench, that is Justice Sabyasachi Mukherjee court. Again, there was an assessment order from CTO Kota refusing to give importance to interstate transaction. That is the reason there was a compulsion on the L&T and other people, Gannon Dunkerley and other people, to move second court. Same type of drama, then ultimately Supreme Court said, no, the Constitution bench will resolve it. There they made it very, very clear, if there is an interstate movement of good person to the contract, state don't have jurisdiction, and this will apply even to works contract also. If there is a declared goods, state cannot impose tax on that. Only thing, major issue, Supreme Court in the second judgment, Gannon Dunkerley, that is 88 STC 204, did not address question of law, was about the status of subcontractor. Probably this aspect may have some bearing in GST regime. This is how the issue went on even till 2016. And in one of the judgment, L&T was a state of Andhra Pradesh, Justice Ramesh Ranganathan. Again, he said there cannot be a transit sale in a works contract. But that has been reversed by another bench by Justice Ramasubramanian recently. I think it is not reported recently. Referring to L&T judgment, it's saying that Section 6(1) of the CST Act has not been considered in that one. And in view of transit sale will also be applicable for works contract. It cannot be denied. So position it took from 1983 to 2016 for one particular species of taxation law, for example, interstate sale, transit sale. It took so much time for the judiciary to settle it. And I feel that should not be the case in GST regime. Similar other issue was declare good, they say, particularly Karnataka state, they said because my state gives a rate of tax as per the 6th schedule, there is one entry called civil work, the rate of is 12%. So declared goods under section 14 and 15 CST, we cannot give any recognition. There cannot be a concept of declared goods. This is how the Karnataka, somewhere in Tamil Nadu also, Orissa, all that, they were not willing to give cognizance for declared goods. Even 286 is very clear on that. This matter again came before Justice Jan Kumar and L&T matter in Kumar, and they said, despite your whatever rate you have fixed on the nature of contract, declared goods per se qualifies the rate fixed under section 14 and 15. That is, 14 gives the description, rate given in 15. State approached Supreme Court in SLP. That is the judgment rendered by Sikri and Rohington Nariman in Srimati Narasimha case. And that judgment was 2016. Here again, from 1983 to 2016, judiciary takes so much of time for settling the law. Industry cannot wait for that. I'm sure for GST also this repetition is not there. The third aspect I thought I should bring it was about the status of subcontracting in a works contract taxability. The first, every state, they were taxing subcontractor as well as the total value of the contract in the hands of the main contract. That means duplication. This issue was resolved by Supreme Court, Justice Kapadia. In 17 VST 1, he is saying that in execution of works contract, the transfer of property takes place from the subcontractor directly to the client, not to the main contractor. It is by accretion goes to the directly to main contract to the client, not to the subcontractor. Again, the states were not willing to follow it. The second round of litigation went to Supreme Court recently. The same bench, Rohington and Shikri in L&T was a state of Karnataka. A step ahead they went and said the turnover of main contractor under the State Act should not at all include the turnover of subcontractor, and also reiterate the 17 VST judgment saying subcontractor, when he effects transfer of property in goods, the transfer deemed sale is directly to the client. There are two reasons. Probably this may have some bearing in GST. That's the reason I thought placing before you. One, in subcontractor, when he supplies the goods under VAT regime, you can't say that a main contractor purchases it. The moment subcontractor supplies good by incorporation, accretion, the deemed sale takes place. The character of goods as a movable taxability is lost. So by no stretch of imagination can be said that the main contractor purchases, takes in his stock, and again redelivers, or he effects deemed sales once again. That could be the rational legal position compelled Supreme Court saying by accretion theory, subcontractor directly effects sale, deemed sale to the client, not to the main contractor. By virtue of that, the main contractor in a given situation cannot take input tax credit also. And the law settled in 2017 recently, again the same situation from 1983, or fairly I can say from 1984 to 2017. So much of time have flown under the bridge, where industry was suffering like anything. Demands were huge demand. So when they approached the court under 226, court always used to take a stand. The law is clear. You go for alternative remedy. Deposit 30%, 40%. This situation, I wish, should not continue under GST Act, though a lot of simplification have been done. Whereas, of course, on interstate, I have touched on that. Subcontractor, I have touched on that. And declare goods also have touched on that. The one more aspect, computing the taxable turnover under the VAT regime. The formula given by Constitutional Bench of Supreme Court, Gannon Dunkerley, 88 of CC 204, at page 235, if these are the exclusion should be there. Fine. It's good enough that from contract value you exclude it and you reach a point of what is the profit and compute the taxable turnover. But the problem industry faced, and the department was fully aware about it, despite that, every month you are required to file monthly return. Every year you are required to file annual return. If you want to file return, the deemed sale, taxable deemed sale, you are required to ascertain. You cannot ascertain from a project business, turnkey contract, individual contract, or works contract, what could be the profit element every month. Even on every year, you cannot ascertain, or at best, on the end of the project, only you can find out what is the profit for the project, and then you arrive the taxable turnover. The question will arise, then what is my position, how I do it for the first month, or the first year, or the subsequent year. For example, the project is for 52 project for a refinery project. You cannot ascertain profit or work taxable turnover. These are the difficulties. Judiciary did not address it. For simple reason, I had 2 rounds of discussion on that matter with a committee of Institute of Chartered Accountants who were involved in accounting standardization. Works contract business, I think it falls under accounting standard 7. The bill raised is not equally taken as a sale in your books of account. It is something valuation is taken, and your profit is also not what actual profit. These are the difficulties we had it, and the department by scrutiny of enforcement people, they say your turnover as reported is not correct and incomplete. This judgment is being passed. I only wish this situation doesn't occur or reiterated in GST. So these are the issues, few selected issues I thought I must place before you before moving it. And that was the purpose of Constitution Amendment Act. And the two judgments initially, Constitution Bench decided the issue somewhere into 1984. Now coming to the 101st Constitution Amendment. Before that, because other indirect taxes have also been subsumed in the GST, one aspect I thought I should touch it very briefly is about Finance Act 1994. Here again, there is a lot of up and down was going on. Before 1/6/2007, there were classified taxable services. For example, construction services, erection installation services, real estate, all that were there. But the works contract by definition under 65(105) ZZZA for the first time was introduced in Finance Act 1994 from 1/6/2007. The question was whether works contract as a species can be taxed from 1/6/2007 or it could be much earlier. Again, there was a full bench of SISTAT, Delhi full bench, 2:3. The chairman was Justice Goda Raghuram, decided minority was in favor of the industry and majority against it. This matter went to Supreme Court against Justice Sikri and Rohinton Nariman. They clarified. And if I am right, Justice Senior Advocate Radhakrishnan appeared for the revenue. Now I think he's sitting judge. Now Supreme Court said works contract means there should be transfer of property, and this is the definition from 1/6/2007 clarified. That means revenue have no jurisdiction to tax it before 1/6/2007. The Council for Revenue, they shot up and saying we have been taxing it from somewhere 2003 onwards on three category of entries: construction services, erection installation, and real estate. He said if at all you can seek jurisdiction, it will be only those construction activity which is pure labor and service. If it involves material also, transfer of material, you don't have jurisdiction. Then the second issue came up. What will be the position when we have already granted exemption, abatement, so many clarification we have done? Justice Nariman said when we are saying you don't have jurisdiction, this all takes to back seat. So we are not intervening on. This is how the industry have been a scapegoat for so many years, more than 1.5 decades. My only thing is in placing all this before you is that GST should not make industry to suffer more. It should be very simple, and of course, litigation will always be there. Our members from Tax Federation will also have good amount of business. I am not intervening on that. My only thing is judiciary must come forward at the earliest, not put on hold. This is where I thought. Coming to Constitution 101 amendment, as I made a mention earlier, not in this forum, in some other forum, when 46th Constitution Amendment was in the offing, based on 61st Law Commission report, LKJA report, there was a mute discussion in Parliament. Only two people, they argued it, or they took participant debate. In this matter, 101 Constitution Amendment Act, prior to that it is called 120. There is not much of debate, discussion, or consideration of what it will be and how this is how 101 Constitution Amendment. The only thing is trade and industry. For any amendment in pipeline must take more proactive representative role and set right it, but it was missing in 101. Now, I have a view coming back to Constitution Amendment 101. Article 366(29)(a), it seems it has become dormant because The very purpose of Article 366(29)(a) Class D was to enlarge the field assigned to the state for taxing. But entry 54 list 2 under 7th schedule itself has undergone total changes. 92A is there, list 1, but it is not going to serve any purpose because most of the goods except alcohol, petrol, and aviation turbine petrol alone has been kept in the CST domain. So, because I find in many advanced ruling, they still refer to Article 366(29). My personal view, it may not assist coming to any reasonable legal conclusion because it has become dormant. Now coming to the other aspect, before touching section 2119, which defines works contract, let us quickly have a look on the construction business profile, how it operates. In construction business, three things are very, very important, and that is live wire for litigation. Any litigation will start from that point of it only. One, the nature of contract. Here, the contract is not perfectly drafted in the manner the statute requires it. Always the interest of the customer takes seat, and the contractor, in his anxiety to get the contract, he accommodates whatever the requirement of the customer. In most of the cases, for some of the legacy matters still in litigation pipeline before various high courts, is because of that. For example, earlier the compulsion or greedy compulsion was the customer will take stand that I'll be getting benefit of C-form. So we draft it in such a way that this is supply contract, that is service contract. But the benefit of C-form has already lost. But despite that, I find in some of the contracts, PGCIL, electricity contracts, refinery contracts, the NHI, of course, it has never been in such type of contract. Others, they frame the contract in such a way, still they want supply contract separately, service contract separately. Recent instance is about air conditioning contracts. It is not backed with the requirement, the benefit that they will get the benefit of C-form, not at all, because C-form is, the issue is no more alive. But many other clients, they have the benefit, the deemed export benefit for importing the goods, or deemed export benefits for the local, for example, power sector, hydel, thermal, and there's one more. Hydel is there, thermal is there, what is that? Coal based. They got a lot of benefits if it outright purchase of goods. In similar situation prevails so far, customs benefits are also there. By compulsion of reducing their project cost and not well informed the concept of GST, except they say all the indirect tax has been subsidized, how it operates without knowing it. They require the contractor to accept two separate contracts. This is one area probably the continuation need to be regrouped by both the contractor and the customer, as well as major role need to be played by the professional like consultant advocates. The second one is about the accounting pattern adopted in construction or project business. Accounting standard AS7, I think some of my friends can correct me, still is in operation. CA Institute is required after the change in position that they should come out with a revised guidelines for project business and GST, how the accounting pattern should be considered by the contractor as well as the clients. Because the transaction document documentation is based on RA bill or progress bill, running account bill or progress bill, in the sense, what could be the nature of supply, what could be the nature of services, or what could be the pattern of executing the work by the subcontractor or overseas vendor or overseas contractor. Irrespective of it, the account, the billing is raised on RA bill, means running account bill or progress bill. This carries an element. The work done during this period is so much. Work done in the period but certified for this lesser values and carried forward so much. The total cumulative figure. And this finds an entry in books of account based on accounting standard AS7. But those from CA fraternity, they can clarify the same value will not enter in books of account as a sale or services. A third evaluation is done when the total contract execution reaches above 50%, and that valuation pattern comes into picture. Now, why I am saying the department will always come with a complaint. Whatever turnover you have reported, what appears in your books of account, that is a mismatch. It is not a reconciliation. So I reject your books, I go for best judgment. That's the situation properly in this given opportunity. If CA can reconsider their accounting standard, maybe the litigation point can reduce and industry can avoid huge demand. The third one, in any project, and mostly I find the a project execution period spans between 32 months to 52 months, huge one, as well as these projects sometime on the is executed spanning between 2 states also, particularly road projects, bridge construction projects, sometimes dam also, cross-country transmission tower project, public. So these are the projects runs between 2 states, and the contractor or the client, they will maintain one single books of account. Here again, the problem which already was there, I think now given situation, it will give more importance for litigation. Probably that is another area, because computation, billing will always be one billing, because one client, one project. Seldom the contractor raised bill 2 bills, one for that state, one for this state. Of course, some based on commercial decision and opinion, this being done. So this aspect need to be taken care. Now, when it comes to the customer's table, the running bill or the progress bill, the bill value as raised, seldom it is cleared or approved for payment. Lot many disallowed based on technical reconciliation, certification by the technical consultant, and if you have raised a bill for 1,000 rupees, maybe 800, 810, or could be for never it happened. Balance is carried forward. The question is, the invoice requirement, the moment you supply is made, supply is treated as taxable event. But in a project business, supply is done, but acceptance is it's later on. Maybe this is based on milestone payment basis or approval by technical expert for a portion of work done. One particular element may not have been done. So entire portion is not approved and it is not accepted. By that, the contractor may not be in a position to raise invoice, though supply is done but not certified or accepted by the. These are the gray areas I feel may drag the contractor or contractee or both to litigation. These are the area I thought I should place before you for a consideration, because more litigation will be there and more dispute between client and the contractor will always be there, and matter need to be reconciled. Now coming to the 46th amendment, 101 Constitution Amendment, major attraction is section 2, clause 119, which says, which defines works contract. Just 1 minute. transfer of property in goods relating immovable property is deemed as works contract. So there is a major departure from 46th Amendment. There Article 366(29)(a) Class B and the conclusion para adopted the totality of works contract as a deemed sale. The conclusion part says such supply of by the contractor is deemed the seller and the recipients are deemed the purchaser. But from Article 366(29)(a), 101st Constitution Amendment, for best known reason, again hives it out, a portion of the totality of works contract, they say, which is related to immovable property alone will be the works contract. Now, what is works contract was at a length was discussed by a full bench in L&T case by Justice Lodhar, Chalmeshwara and Madan Lokur, and incidentally, very uniquely, was argued by Rohington Nariman, who is on the other side of it. So if any member want to know what the totality of works contract, that is a very good judgment, provides complete detail. Now, a works contract can be immovable form or it can be movable form. For example, tire retreading, erection installation of air conditioner or transmission tower, it's a movable nature. Even smallest example is repairing your fan. So these are the one. So question arises, the balance one other than section 2119, where I should bring it. One answer is that it should go as a composite supply. A couple of advanced ruling has also taken a view. So one, I'm not sure what was the benefit there or the simplification the legislation thought about it in bringing immovable property concept as works contract. Probably they could have thought to bring entirety and the dispute area could have been reduced. Second one, I will one minute. One aspect which probably on the major agenda moving from erstwhile indirect tax administration concept to GST to bring in all the states under roof of single one tax, one nation concept. That means moving from federal polity to cooperative federal polity. States legislature, they have endorsed their legislative function exercise to be governed by the 101 Constitution Amendment and in turn to be taken care by the elderly family member, that is GST Council, which in another few minutes I'll be touching on that. The thing is basically the federal concept of tax administration, which is more appropriate under entry 54 list 2 and 92A list 1 as well as concurrent list, has completely moved into one aspect by virtue of Article 286A that has been inserted, which says Parliament has exclusive power to make laws with respect to goods and services where the supply of goods or service or both takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. 246(2) says Parliament and alone has competed for interstate. If you look at 246(1), it says the Parliament and state, they have it in their respective field. There is a minor changes that has moved from entry 92A, list 1, 7th schedule. There you would have find tax on sale or purchase of other than entry 54. That is CST Act in colloquial, or the concept of interstate, or what is the principle of law given on section 3 of CST Act was given supreme as a message that state legislature, while enacting the state law, should not encroach on that. That particular area is, in my personal view, is missing for reasons still I am not able to reach. So there is a departure into 46A2. The other aspect, while dealing in 101 Constitution, entry 54, which was the field earlier available to the state, which is no more there. Where is it? By section 70 to 101 Constitution only reads, very briefly, entry 54 shall be substituted. Tax on sale of petroleum product, high-speed diesel, motor, this or that for human, other liquor for human consumption, but not include sale in the course of, not including in the interstate sale or commerce, and gas. Now, this is the only area at the moment state is still have the jurisdiction to levy under the erstwhile sale tax. But other than that, state will not be of its own, can think about levy or proposal to levy GST. The reason straight I'll give it. But 92 has not been touched it. Similarly, entry 54 for excise duty have been redefined now. That means from federal it has moved to cooperative federalism. Coming to Article 366 of Constitution 101 says, only inserts goods and service definition in class 12A. Then 26A class defines services very meagerly, saying other than the goods. This is all happens in definition class of 366, nothing beyond that. I think with that, I will not dwell more on the constitution aspect. Anything else? Only thing I will take you, when I said the state cannot do anything there, the taxation field is much more abridged than it was. Only touching on Article 279A that was inserted by 101 Constitution Amendment Act. Here, it is my opinion, what was the legislative exercise to have been carried by the parliament or equally by the state legislature in a different avatar has been entrusted to the GST Council, to which state have a representation, central also have a representation, but representation in my view is dominated by the central because the voice is from the finance minister, union finance minister itself. When you say there will be one tax, one nation, if you will have a look on Article 279A, small g, 4G, out of 35 states, near about 13 states have been carved out, Northeast state, and they have been placed under special status for which the GST Council will only be dealing with the matter. That means, to what an extent cooperative federalism is an answer is a matter to be noted. The other one, I said about the presently in the State Sale Tax Act, select item is left with the state to deal with levy and collect tax. Is on a Damocles sword by Article 279A, Class 5, which reads as, the Goods and Service Tax Council shall recommend the date on which the goods and service tax be levied on petroleum, crude, and so on. So that means any date the council can pull the plug and the state will be redundant so far their power to levy sale tax. It can happen anytime. That means the resources for public welfare, for economic development of each state, which at the moment in a greater way is dependent, supplemented by the central government as compensation, and partly by the taxing the petroleum product will also move out of it, and many states will be under the total control and governance of the council, not even parliament. I look for a moment saying the parliament, even if they want to do anything in this matter of its their own, they can't be unless GST council recommends them, please do that, please do that. Even state will not be able to, that is the situation. Now, our memory is very clear in the recent past what happened in the compensation to the state. Central said because of the current situation, please you approach the state's Reserve Bank and draw the loan. There is no guarantee this state will also be vulnerable to this situation at a later point. That's the only thing I want. Why states have not made any protection in this question. Then the rate of tax is also governed by 279A, and only council have an upper hand in deciding rate of tax. I give an example. There was a situation in Tamil Nadu when there was total shortage of power supply. That was an emergency situation. When I, as a president of Madras Chamber, met the CM, the issue at that point said, do we have under the Tamil Nadu VAT Act to do anything? Industry represented, please reduce the rate of genset, local purchases. Diesel and petrol, reduce it. Help the industry. Second day, the state government intervened, and this can happen. But even in a crisis, economic crisis, state wants to support the particular industry. They will not be able to do it because they will have to look the council and for any decrease or increase the rate of tax. Of their own, they may not be able to do it. That's an area, probably a via media solution need to be recommended. Probably associations can also think about it. The entries reads about Article 279A, the rates including floor rates with bands of goods and services by recommendation of council. And last one, an omnibus clause is also provided. Any other matter relating to goods and service tax, as the council may decide. This is where we stand so far. The issues are concerned. And added to that, even the Goods and Service Tax Council shall determine the procedure in the performance of the function. Now, everything is left with the council. Now, one can raise a question, that is the whole wisdom behind enacting GST. But can you divorce the economic condition of peculiar condition, economic condition or mineral wealth of each state to which it has been depended for its raising resources, and can say, I will continue with the same tone of my economic or industrial development, public welfare on a resource depending upon the third party. To what extent it can be successful by the state is a big question to me. And that is the reason I gave an example. In a given situation, up and down pulling the leverage by the state, reducing rate or increasing rate may not be available. If you want to give thrust to automobile industry particular year, or if you want to earn more through the other economic wealth, coal, tin, sheets, or other thing, the particular state may not have maneuvering right to do it, they will have to look only with the, these are the issues where already discussed at the point, at the stage of what you call 101 Constitution Amendment. But I'm repeating it because the state has started feeling the pinch in the slowdown of economical activity. Some of the states are moving from one state to another state. Some of the industries are saying, I will say goodbye to India, moving out. All these things may not be good enough for the economic activities or its development. This is where I thought I should briefly touch on the 101 Constitution Amendment Act. The Constitution Amendment doesn't define the supply, nor, and another thing is the import sale, which was protected earlier under 286, has been brought under IGST as an interstate GST. Of course, entry tax was already settled by Orissa High Court. Interstate, why it can't be entry tax, cannot be. It has been reiterated by Supreme Court later on. In this background, can I proceed to look quickly the three aspects before we draw conclusion about GST? Yes. The rate of tax, the upper limit is 20, but still some freedom, some leverage need to be given to the respective state, because each state has a very peculiar or enviable economical status, which is not uniformly spread across all the 38 states. And to support this economic or public welfare agenda, they need resources. It is not a case that 100% compensation for all the activities. They can look to the central government or Reserve Bank of India. In that case, I feel some minor concession need to be given and leverage to be provided for the state which has a peculiar situation. The next one will be at section 119 says works contract to be for immovable property. This will have a potential area of dispute between revenue and the industry, construction industry. It will also have an unpleasant business relationship between the contractee, client, or project owners and the contractors, because I find many times, based on certain opinion, clients takes stand, this contract is movable. You select the rate as applicable to movable. Don't say it's a works contract. Or sometimes they say, I will again place two separate contracts, one for supply of goods, another for service erection, service portion. The compulsion, as I mentioned in the beginning, will be either the supply, sale of goods is 5%, or the customer must be looking for more element for cost, project cost reduction in the form of deemed export, foreign trade policy, or benefits by notification issued under the customs. So there is compulsion on the customer to dictate terms on the contractor, saying you be treated as a supply contract. But when I find, I have not come across any contractee having drafted a perfect supply contract. They are always guided by their own project reduction agenda. At the same time, back up of their mind, they keep it the sole reasoning and fear that the contractor having supplied the goods should not breach the contract for the next portion if that is not related. This compels it half-hearted drafting of the contract which definitely will bring to litigation stage. After this, I'll take you only to 3 advanced ruling decision to demonstrate what is already registered in the revenue or department mind. These are the situation industry and consultant or counsel advocates will have to face it. You may say it is immovable. Revenue at a later point of time on completion of the contract or much later will come with a theory. It is not immovable. It is movable. I can dismantle it. I can re-erect in some places. So the what is movable, what is immovable will be another area of debate and discussion at a later point, much later than what your supply has already completed. A belated issue is always visited with a levy of penalty and interest, which will be additional cost. Because customer will not be very soothing in drafting it, because in a project of 10,000 or 18,000 or maybe sometime 20,000 crores, his agenda will always to see that how much saving or cost reduction in the contract I can think about it. What is your taxes and duties parameters? It is in the secondary for him. It takes always back seat. Here the opinion to be sought by the customer or the contractor, there will be more onus on the professionals to give opinion covering all this situation, and already in the pipeline is whether it is immobile or whether it is movable will always be an issue, a bone of contention. Second one, whether it is supply of goods or whether it is works contract. Supply means 5%. This will also be an area where the dispute will always be there, and the line of thinking has already echoed in advanced ruling itself. The next comes about input tax credit. I don't find much of the issue on input tax credit, except a caveat that what is a quasi-judicial authority or officer is required to do under the quasi-judicial function, that has been shifted to the business community or the contractor. In the sense, section 17(5)(c) says the client is not entitled for input tax credit except if it is a plant and machinery, or with another exception when input supply by works contract is there, which is required for use in further execution of works contract. There I find 2 elements. One, major portion of construction business, a small portion plant and machinery type of it, say for refinery, Mangalore refinery or Baroni refinery or all that, Tata refinery where plant and machinery is the primary issue. There the customer can take the input tax credit. But otherwise the customer, contractee or client, they are disqualified under 17(5)(c) from taking input tax credit. That means the main contractor, when he executes the work, he is qualified to take input tax credit, including from the subcontractor. In this background, when main contractor raises invoice including element of GST, the entire load of GST will be sitting as a cost on the project, say for road job, say for railway electrification or railway tracking work, government jobs, state, central, local body jobs, where the output liability is not there. That means the burden of GST has shifted to the other end, who are not required to pay output tax. This input tax credit having denied, it becomes a cost to them, and this will be a burden to the common man also. Maybe our fraternity may not be interested because it's in a scheme of that bit doesn't touch on it. But coming to input tax credit, there is another two elements are there under Rule 34 and 35, where if contractor fails to release payment against the against the vendor bill within 180 days, he is required to reverse it with interest. On the other side, if contractor releases the payment with tax component to the vendor or subcontractor, but for some reason subcontractor or vendor fails to file return under 39 or pay tax, the burden is shifted to the main contractor in disqualifying him from taking it even 20% or 10% initially taken on provisional basis with an added burden of interest. Now, it seems in the first limb, why the government should interfere in a commercial situation which depends more on many factors, There can be situation on back-to-back contractor may not be required for better credit facilities to pay within 180 days though supply is made, because progress of work has to be done as per the schedule of the client order. But the legislation intervenes in this area, compels you, dictates it, saying 180 days upper limit, commercially also, you bloody well go and pay to him. I think that is too much on their part. I have not analyzed whether this will have an implication on Article 301A. When the contractor, subcontractor or vendor or somebody pays it, you having realized the tax, that's the end of it. It is too much on your part to dictate terms on it, which is interfering with the business activities, 21 article, and say 180 is upper limit. Whether you have evaluated the commercial exigencies of each project requirement, business requirement, there can be a number of issues are there. And I have come across most dominantly when even before the project is on tender stage, because of specialization and engineering specialization, technical specialization, the main contractor depends on overseas high-skilled equipment manufacturer to undertake, start taking design, drawing, manufacturing, all that. And part of it also supplied before a LOI is released. It happens in many cases. Then what will be the case of a contractor if he doesn't release in 180 days? There can be some sort of dispute. Bill is received. Commercial dispute prevails. He may not be in a position 180 days. Then what will happen? All is well and good. For some reason, he's in a bad shape. There can be frivolous insolvency, bankruptcy court litigation appeal. And there is a moratorium also till it is removed beyond 180 days. What will be the fate of the main contractor in losing it? Because this need also to be appreciated for an upper limit period, in the sense the scheme of that says you cannot take input tax credit beyond 1 year. So there is the upper limit of 1 year. Here 180 days, the contractor is sandwiched in between that position. Is it not? It's too extreme situation where you are making him scapegoat, though you have earned the tax from the input supplier. That should be the end of it.
Mr. Purushottam.
There can be many such repetition examples.
Mr. Purushottam.
Yes, sir.
We are 1 hour already. I'll request you to kindly, if possible, conclude within 5-6 minutes.
Okay, sure. Will you not give me grace time of 15 minutes? Air India used to give it when they fly late. Okay. Mr. Joshi, I'll complete it quickly. Only touching on, I leave it this one, except that one subcontractor I thought I may highlight it. With that, I will conclude it. This on ITC, there is another extreme situation. I make payment to the vendor or the subcontractor. He is a defaulter under Section 39, having not filed the return, having not paid it. The RG2A or 2B doesn't reflect it. I am denied of it. How do you take that one? The I don't have quasi judicial power to sue that, to question him under GST Act. The person who can haul up such defaulter is only the jurisdictional authority. As a contractor, I have no role, statutory role, but still this policing work is shifted to me. Probably you can think in terms of the impossibility of performance, which Justice T.N.C. Rangarajan made a mention in the context of TDS in media communication case 105. There are numbers of decisions, but example I give. So this with that, because of the time, I think this is in a gray area of litigation. I don't know whether I'll be able to touch by backup of example with advanced ruling, but I give the reference, probably members can have a look. Coming to the subcontractor, notification 11 of 2017 read with notification 20 of 2017 and later on 1 by 2018. There is a complete mess up is done. I'll give one example. If you see chapter 3, it provides for construction. Construction by way of construction so and so for government and other thing. If you see under 3, entry 4, it only say by way of. The second entry is Roman 5, small entry Roman 5. It say by way of, but pertaining to. And later on, if you see entry 9, 10, and 11, and finally 12. Now, in this comparative position, because I may not be able to take it to the entire, the question arises whether the subcontractor will also be entitled in the main contractor, government's this one, and will be entitled for the reduced rate. I won't call it as a concession, reduced rate of 12%. The interpretation of the revenue is already registered in appellate advance ruling with the reference to entry Roman 5, where the question before advance ruling authority was whether a subcontractor is also entitled. Advance ruling authority said, yes, he is entitled in the entry 5 because it says by way of and pertaining to. Pertaining to, I take it as in relation to, which is wide enough. In the stream of the transaction, complete transaction, A, B, Z who come under that one will also get into the main scheme, and the reduced rate of 12% will be eligible. But on comparison basis, if you look at entry 5, there is no reference about subcontractor nor it says pertaining to. There is already advanced ruling which say, of course, they have not been successful in appellate forum because of, appellate forum refused to decide on that, both coming from Maharashtra appellate forum. But the issue remains that whether subcontractor will be on the same concession rate under this notification. My answer is no for 2 reasons, except entry 5. If you look at the other entries, in the condition, there are very rigid conditions to be provided. It says a condition that such service should have been directly procured by the entity who has given the work, and says the supplier should have been assigned the work by the government. Does it mean the subcontractor should have also been given work directly by the client or not? Is a controversial issue. My answer is it will not be workable, and no client can directly place order on subcontractor, because the concept of main contractor subcontractor will not remain there in that situation. Some clients have advanced argument saying it is my nominated party. Nominated party, even then under the condition, will face problem, and already in the advanced ruling matter, this situation prevails on that. The last issue, the entry 12, kindly see, if somebody is not fitting under all the entries, then there is an omnibus entry 12. They say those who are not fitting, I assume subcontractor will also not be fitting in that because of the controversy. then he will have to adopt for 18% tax under entry 12. If he pays 18%, on the totality main contractor pays 12%, that it gives birth to another controversy, which Madras High Court the day before yesterday, they disagreed with the Gujarat High Court decision by Justice Pardiwala, what you call inverted duty issue. Here is 18 input, there is 12, this another area will be there. I think these are the one I thought of it. Subcontractor is a gray area. Probably those who are interested, I'll give the citation. Nikhil Comforts Limited air condition issue on the same point, 27 GSTL 309, or another very excellent one, which is 1 minute, I'll give you in 66 GSTR page number 369. The citation is Farm Solar Farms, again by the Maharashtra. Then last one, very importantly, where I made a mention, entry 5 and other controversial, Sri Construction, there they denied the benefit, and this is the mindset of the department you have in advance. You can read how the litigation is bound to be. It can be towards conclusion, I will say, the area should be for the industry. There is one more. Mr. Joshi, just bear with me for 1 more minute. Huh? Yes. It seems there is an advance tax, huge advance taxes. In a 20,000 crore, when the contractor gets, is a huge amount. Whereas supply of goods exemption is there for advances, but service it is not there. Works contract defined under 2119 by virtue of second schedule entry 6A, it is deemed to be service. When huge advance is received, there is no exemption from GST, but whereas goods, it is exempted is another gray area. That is, I thought I should make a mention. Solar power area, yes, there is a lot of in the project that 5% is there, but department says it is a works contract, not a supply. These are the few things I thought. And towards conclusion, yes, I would wind up saying TDS is another area, but my conclusion, including All India Tax Federation and the trade bodies, need to ramp up of representation effectively on many issues like TDS, why there is no composition for works contract, though there is a service, and these are the area. The other area, the professional will have to take care, drafting of contract. Very meticulously, you'll have to think of drafting. Where there is an area of disagreement, clients are resorting to arbitration, but that will take another situation. Then transaction document linked with accounting standard AS7, probably CA Institute will have to take care. And very importantly, when your client gets show cause notice, I find a reply is given in a very easy and casual manner. Even NCLT also, we find the party respondent gets struggling because the draft of reply is not very professionally clear. That's an area professionals will have to step in and do it, all that. So thanks a lot. Thanks for it. Thanks for giving this opportunity. Thanks, Mr. Sharaf. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Purushottam.
Sorry, my overstepping 5-10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Purushottam, for such a wonderful explanation. Although this is not my subject, I already only deal in direct taxes, but then also the way you explained was wonderful. I got the points. At the outset, I must first apologize to our chairman, Dr. Ashok Saraf, that I missed the decorum of starting the meeting without introducing Dr. Ashok Saraf and welcoming him and giving him the mic and handing over him the mic. So I am extremely sorry for missing that decorum.
No, that is not required. That is not required. Let us come to the now conclusion.
And once again,
to some extent, I fill up the gap because I am also in 2 times I could not meet the Dr. Sharaf in Guwahati long back. in Adarsh Goel bench when I was with Dr. Todi, and second time in that. So some extent probably he will pardon us.
But that was a mistake on my part. And therefore, I now hand over to Dr. Ashok Saraf, the chairman of the meeting, to further take the course of action.
Thank you, Mr. Sandeepji. In fact, when I was requested to be the chairman of the session, I told Mr. Vivek that there are many GST experts in our federation. I am not the expert. I find that Mr. Joshi is in there, Mr. G.N. Purohit is here, Mr. Venkatamani is there, who are the stalwarts of the GST and who know the subject in great details. And I thought that he should, I told him that why don't you have the chairman of the out of these three? Perhaps he had chosen me because I am from the East Zone and East Zone want to have their own person as chairman. But that is the only criteria on which I have been made the chairman. Otherwise, the subject point of view, I think other people who are there, senior people, the PC Joshi, Purohitji and Venkatamani, they were the better person who could have chaired the session. Anyway, when I have been given the task of the chairing the session, I will perform my duties. In fact, I was hearing very carefully Mr. Purushottam. Recently also I found that in the cause list, Mr. Purushottam's name was there in one of the matters for appearing with the Guwahati High Court. So I was carefully hearing the Mr. Purushottam. In fact, frankly saying, if I say, I thought that the GST provisions will be better explained in the today's session. But Mr. Purushottam has dealt with the issues of the practical, of the difficulties which are faced by the contractors, by the various ways and all those things, which in fact, for me, so far I am concerned, because I don't deal with the matters in other than the High Court. For me, actually speaking, these may be useful for all the persons who are practicing at the departmental level. But for me, in fact, I was thinking that something on the constitutional level, the GST provisions and all those things to explain. Friends, GST, whatever may be that, whatever constitutional amendment is there, whatever the provisions are there, they are existing, and till the provisions exist, we have to comply with them. 2-3 issues which came to my mind, not although I don't know whether how far they are relevant or not relevant, but they came to my mind. One, when I was hearing that in a composite contract of supply and services by a deeming fiction, they are treated to be a contract of service. I was just thinking that whether the legislature has any power to treat something which is service, a supply, to be a service by a deeming provision. Because the rates are different, the provisions are different. Now, only because you have the power to levy tax on supply and service, and something which is supply, and you said that because it is a composite of supply and service, it should be treated to be deemed to be a service. According to me, and I feel so, that it is a case where the legislative powers of should be challenged, that the legislature cannot, in my humble opinion, although it will be ultimately by the High Courts and Supreme Courts to decide, ultimately, according to me, the legislature cannot treat something which is purely supply, which falls purely on supply, and say that because it is a composite contract of supply and services, the same should be treated as service and shall be deemed to be the service. You see, there are early judgments. If you look into some judgments, old judgments of the income tax, where the Supreme Court clearly said that you can levy, like income tax, the provisions were there, that you can levy tax under income tax only if there is income. You cannot something which is not income to be income and levy the tax on this thing. There is a redeeming provision in Income Tax Act that loss will be treated to be income and the same will be tax under Income Tax Act. And the tax will apply to the income tax. I think the answer will be no. You can't do it. If you can't do it for that, applying that analogy, I understand that the supply and services, both powers are there here, but both powers are there and they are to operate in different fields. Supply has been defined separately, service has been defined separately. There are different provisions. The question is that you see that the composite contracts have been treated to be a service. Now a very interesting case came before the Guwahati High Court, which is pending now. Earlier, the contractor said that the service tax which is there, that will be paid by the contractor. And he made a limit of it, that like 15 crores up to service tax I will pay, and balance, if any, it will be recovered, and balance, if any, that will be borne by the contractor. Now, the question which came up, that after the GST, the Finance Act 1994 is no longer there, service tax is no longer there. GST is there, so the contractor is liable to pay the GST. You will find that a very interesting opinion of the Attorney General of India, who gave the opinion to the contractor, saying that though Finance Act 1994 is not there, but what was levied earlier was the service tax, and under the GST law also, the composite contract of bus contract are treated to be service. So for all purposes, it is service tax. After GST also, for all purposes after the GST Act also, and thereby, what difference was there? Whatever difference was there between the service tax which was leviable earlier and whatever 2% it has been increased now, that 2% only should be paid to the contractor. Now, the point which is being argued is that for all purposes, it is service tax because it is a goods and service tax. This is a new legislation by virtue of a constitutional amendment, by virtue of a different entry itself. The earlier entry imposing the service tax is no longer there. The earlier imposition of the service tax by way of Finance Act 1994 is no longer there. Now, if that is no longer there, then can it be said that under the GST, whatever is levied is service tax? The question is that the supply of services and supply of goods. Now, in my view, the matter is pending, the matter is being heard, that can the GST law on the composite contract, it can be said that it is a service tax. It may be treated to be a service, but can it be said to be a service tax? Now, these are some of the interesting points which are coming up, like the immovable property, that the bus contract must be relating to the immovable property. Now, there is no definition of immovable property given the GST Act. I have not found. I don't know whether the persons who are regularly dealing with the GST Act, they may better say. If I'm incorrect, I may be corrected. That the definition, I have not come across the definition of the immovable property, and the recourse has to be taken to the definition given in the General Clause Act about the immovable property. When such an important definition of immovable property, because the bus contract relating to immovable property are now liable to be taxed under the GST law. Under such a situation, it was incumbent on the part of the legislature to give a definition of the immovable property in the act itself, saying that whatever is movable property has been defined, goods have been defined. So whatever is not there in the goods, the movable property or whatever is there, all will become movable property. That is not correct. Because if you go through the definition of the General Clause Act, the movable property which is given, you will find there will be many more litigations, because like assuming I'm saying the towers, the mobile towers which are erected. Now this can be dismantled before supply also. It is not so that they are permanently attached and they cannot be dismantled before the supply. Now whether they will come in the immutable property or not, earlier also there are a lot of disputes going on in the excise, so far excise is concerned, that whether they are immutable property, whether they are permanent or whether they can be removed. The litigations are going on. The full bench of the Delhi High Court has already given that no, this is not an immutable property. The other places the litigations are going on. Now, if all those litigations, whatever are going on, will have a far-reaching effect on the levy of the tax in the GST law also. Now, Mr. Purushottam was saying about the 180 days payment and all those things. I am not aware whether that is only applicable to the contract. I think that is applicable for the all. This is not applicable to the worst contract only. This is applicable in respect of the all. And if it is applicable in respect to the all, then the worst contract or no worst contract, the provision is applicable. In worst contract, there may be some difficulties, but the provision as a whole may be challenged because of the provision that 180 days limitations cannot be there. But one cannot say that because the difficulties are there in respect of worst contract, so the provision is illegal or arbitrary. It cannot be said. If it is the arbitrary or illegal or the jurisdiction is not there, or such a provision cannot be incorporated in the taxing statute, then that must be in respect of the all. Then only the validity can be challenged or arbitrariness can be challenged. As you know, that earlier the arbitrariness of the provision was not a ground to challenge the validity. But recently, Justice Rohinton has given a judgment that gross arbitrariness of a provision is also a ground to challenge the validity of the provision. So if it is so arbitrary, or earlier there were very limited grounds on which the validity of the provision can be challenged. So if it is so arbitrary, the provision is there of making payment within 180 days and denial of the reversal of the input credit or within 1 year, whatever provision Mr. Purushottam, I could understand and I could hear from Mr. Purushottam because I was not aware at all of these type of provisions. But if such type of provisions are there and the provisions are found to be very grossly arbitrary and not in accordance with as Mr. Purushottam is also aware and the other audience is also aware, under the Income Tax Act also, the Supreme Court said that in the commercial matter, how the business is to be run and how the business is to be transacted, that cannot be determined by the authorities. It is to be left on the SSC how to run the business and how to not to run the business. Now, if that is to be done, that is to be decided by the parties themselves. And if both the parties decide that no, 180 days instead of 180 days, it will be payment will be made after 1 year, or if some other regions, whatever are there, then such type of provisions incorporating in the GST law, according to me, shall be maybe challenged on the ground of the gross arbitrariness of the provision. And if such a provision is challenged on the ground of gross arbitrariness, I think what will happen ultimately, that will be difficult to say. But according to me, this is a strong ground to challenge the provision and to challenge it on the ground of gross arbitrariness of the provision. So far as the decisions NT 54, NT 92A, and what happened to the Builders Association, Gannon Dunkley, and all those things, according to me, that is now a past history. That history now, because whatever judgments were there of the Apex Court and all those things, they are no longer applicable because of the CST Act amendment, as well as the amendment of the respective VAT Acts, as well as the entry itself, when NT 54 and 92A and all of this have been restricted to only few commodities. Then the question of the applicability of those provisions because the CST Act itself is applicable only in respect of the 6 or 7 commodities. Then if it is applicable only in respect of 6 and 7 commodities, then section 14, 15, all those things, according to me, they are of no use. So the history of that, what happened to the Gannon Dunkley in 54, what happened to the Builders Association, what happened to the Gannon Dunkley, and thereafter what happened to 14, 15, all those things, according to me, now at present, at least, except those which are pending matters are there before the courts, the matters which have not been decided finally, except that according to me, they have no relevance in the present context. So far as the reliance on the advanced rulings of the various advanced rulings are concerned, my view is that we should not go by the whatever has been decided in the advanced ruling. Advanced rulings are given. You'll find one advanced ruling given one saying something, another advanced ruling saying another thing. Now, advanced rulings have nothing, according to me, till the matter is settled by the High Court or the Supreme Court. I say not by the High Court also. And according to me, if I say frankly, by the Supreme Court also, till the decision exists, till the Supreme Court decision exists and is not reversed by the larger bench, you can rely on the decision of the Supreme Court. Otherwise, according to me, you should do what you feel correct, and you feel that that is the law, and this is the interpretation of the correct law. You should follow that, because there may be time where what you feel correct and what is the interpretation which you follow is maybe adopted by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court may say, yes, that is the correct law. Instead of going by only following blindly the decisions of or rulings of the advanced ruling or of any High Court, according to me, you should follow what interpretation. Yes, you are bound. If the High Court has given a decision, jurisdictional High Court has given a decision, you are bound by it. But that is not the end of the matter. The High Court decision, whatever is there, that you are bound by it till it exists. So according to me, whatever interpretation and whatever feelings are there should be your own interpretation, your own understanding, and that you should follow, and take the matter further by challenging that to a decision and say that yes, this interpretation is incorrect, and the High Court decision is also incorrect. The most important thing is that, you see, according to me, what was there prior to GST and after GST, the same thing is there. Different High Courts are giving different decisions. One High Court is saying something, another High Court is saying something. One advanced ruling is something, another advanced ruling is something. The matter will ultimately reach the High Court, Supreme Court. It will take 4 or 5 years at least in the getting a matter settled in the Supreme Court. Now, the question is that when the matter will be decided by the Supreme Court, by that time, many things will be over. Now, under the GST law, when one law, one country, one law, one system was to be introduced, then there should have been some mechanism for deciding the litigations also, because you cannot go that GST, one law, one country, everything one is there, and thereafter any High Court, one High Court will decide, say something, single bench. Thereafter, after 2 years, the division bench will say something. Thereafter, another High Court will say that we don't follow it. So this will become a mess. Everything will be in a mess now. You'll find that if you go through the journals, you'll find that every High Court is giving his own interpretations on the GST, and the persons who are to implement it, SSCs as well as the authorities, they are nowhere. They don't know what is to be done. One advanced ruling comes something, another advanced ruling is coming something. So according to me, some mechanism should be devised. In what way it is to be devised, what way it is not to be devised. But if the will is there, it can be devised, because earlier also when the GST Act has not come, then also the situation was that how it will be done, it is a federal structure, how the entire country, the law can be won, how the thing will be done. It has come. The amendment, constitutional amendment was there, entries have been amended, and everything has been done. So if it's taken care of, then only something maybe better may come, or something result may be there. Otherwise, according to me, whether it is VAT, whether it is GST, whether it is anything else, the situation is the same. The persons or SSCs, as well as anybody who is connected with INSOOP, is not aware what is to be done and what is not to be done, to follow Jharkhand or to follow Allahabad or to follow Bombay or to follow Delhi. Nobody knows that which is to judgment followed. Every judgments are there. So this is different colors. You will find that in different colors, a rainbow type of situation is arising, that the rainbow is there. Whichever color you want, you take advantage of it. Whichever color you don't want, you don't follow it and say this is correct, that is correct. So the worst contact, the subject which was given according to me, the worst contact on the VAT and the GST law, and giving a time of 1 hour to Mr. Purushottam to speak on the subject on the VAT, GST, and the worst contact on the VAT and the GST law, according to me, it is doing injustice to him. 1 hour, a person to ask him to speak on the VAT, GST and the VAT law and work content and VAT law as well as the GST law. How you can think of, although Mr. Purushottam has covered the subject by saying 46th Amendment also, because you have given the VAT also, he has to speak and he has to cover this one. In the meantime, Mr. Garodia says that the time is over. So I think the time which the Mr. Purushottam was given the time limit, he has performed, he has done justice to the subject. He has spoken very nicely and dealt with the subject in a very lucid manner. I think sometime again, the East Zone should organize it on the one provision only of the GST law and have invite again Mr. Purushottam to speak on the worst contact under the GST law on one provision only. Not all, whether you take place of supply or services or whether you take or any other, but only one, and then have a cessation. Then I think better it will be done, and the persons who are joining the webinar on Saturday before the lunch hour, they will be better, I think, benefited. This is my personal view. You cannot expect me more than what Mr. Purushottam said, because in fact I always say that I'm not an expert on the GST law. The GST law experts should have been there, and if the GST law experts are invited, and even now you can ask Mr. Krishi Joshi or Mr. Purohit to give their comments, so that the listeners who are there who join the webinar may be better benefited. Thank you very much once again to the organizers of the webinar. I am very grateful that East Zone has come forward now to organize the seminar because all other zones were doing it. The East Zone was only participating in that. Now East Zone has also taken the lead. So I am congratulating Mr. Garodia, Mr. Vivek Agarwal, and all others who are connected in organizing the webinar. And with that, I am grateful to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok Bhaiya, for a wonderful explanation to the aversions given by P. Purushottam. Although you claim that you are not a GST expert, but whatever you have, आपने जिस तरह से विवेचना की है, I think you are one of the best GST experts available in our Eastern Zone. So I congratulate you on sharing the statements of P. Purushottam and everything so nicely. What I personally feel, I must put it on record, that in India, a law is being formed, and till the date when law is settled, it is changed. Firstly, it was sales tax law. At that time also, we were regularly hearing works contract under sales tax law. Then it was somehow settled by the apex court in various judgments, how the works contract will work under sales tax law. It was changed to VAT. And again, a new regime started, works contract in VAT regime. It was also almost to be settled by the apex court in various judgments. The VAT was also removed. Now we are with GST and talking about works contract on GST. I hope and trust that this time, when the things will be settled, a new law does not being enacted.
Government is acting for you only.
Yes.
For the professionals only, keeping your interest.
I agree.
And the government is saying that when the matter is settled, so new laws so that the professionals should be busy.
I agree. Thank you. And I am also thankful to you, Dr. Saraf, that you have forgiven me for the missing of the decorum. Thank you again. Now, we have taken almost 2 hours of this webinar. So I'll request Sri Vivekanandji Mohanty to give vote of thanks on the webinar. Over to Vivekanandji Mohanty.
Sir, before that, can I raise one question regarding constitutional aspect?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Very good afternoon to the learned speaker, sir. Sir, as you very nicely explained that 46th constitutional amendment, it introduced the concept of deemed sales. Okay, so I want to stick to these 3 clauses only: the transfer of property, where whether as goods or in some other form involved in the execution of works contract. This is the clause B. And then there is a transfer of right to use goods, and then supply of food as goods. These are the 3 clauses out of the 6 clauses. Now, sir, before this Constitution 101st Amendment Act, in 2011, the 15th Lok Sabha, it introduced this 115th Amendment Bill for GST. In that bill, this Article 366(29)A, it was omitted. It was not there. But the bill got lapsed after the completion of that 15th Lok Sabha. And again in this 2000 next year, when this Constitution 101st Amendment Act it came, it retained this clause 29A. And in fact, when the matter went to the Select Committee of Rajya Sabha, this particular thing was discussed in the Select Committee, and some experts were of the view that it should be omitted. This clause 29A has no relevance. It has become redundant because of 246 capital A, and it should be omitted. But the Parliament consciously retained this clause. So my question is, sir, in Section 7, definition of supply, and coming to that Schedule 2, they have treated this as a deemed supply of service. But the definition is saying that it is a deemed sale. So, isn't it to that extent it is in direct conflict with 29A? Sir, this is my question, sir.
You are raising to me. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, I'll respond to you.
Yes, sir.
Probably you raise this issue to draft a writ petition, it looks like. See, to me, that's the whole reason I was under compulsion to briefly discuss about Article 46th Amendment and BI judgment. It is only from that angle I just thought I raised that issue. Now, there are 3 aspects you find under 2119, they say transfer of property in goods. And that is a parliament legislation, it's not delegate. 366(29)A, which is the definition provision of the Constitution, was also by the Parliament. Right? If you see Schedule 2, first entry to the heading transfer, there is a mention transfer of title to goods. If you go to Section 17, there is also a reference, but transfer of document of title to goods also is there. And now, certainly I am with you to endorse that the provision is vulnerable, as the Dr. Sharaf was saying. How can, while bodily 3629A is surviving, you have not repealed it. Still, in a different form of 2119, you are bringing it. But bringing it in an abridged form, the question is whether it can overlap without giving cognizance to up, or both can be taken up and get into a mess. This definitely it needs to be. See, matter would have been simple or without any vulnerability. Add Section 2119 or Schedule 2 6A, had it started with a non-abstinent clause, notwithstanding 3629 matter would have been slightly different. In the absence of, it is vulnerable, but a larger issue, because both legislation is by the Parliament. Parliament has a wide discretion, it need only to be read down. I have a feeling if it is moved to judiciary, they only will have to read it down, because the wisdom of legislature, that is Parliament, I don't think they can contest on that. Because that is also by Parliament, this is also by the Parliament. It is not like a judicial decision by single bench, division bench, or larger bench. It is not like that. To raise a plea, but that is also Parliament. This is under a lot of decisions are there, which is they had legislature have wide discretion. But yes, there cannot be parallel thing to run across. You create 119. Can we say when there is 119 there, they don't have jurisdiction to levy balance works contract category? As the things to be yes to me. They cannot bring it under composite category. So this has to be tested. But yes, at this, opened it with a non-abstinent clause, there could have been saved. But judicially will always prefer to sit down in similar situations. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Purushottam,
Yes, sir. Yes.
now I hand over the mic to Vivekanandji Mohanty. Please give your vote of thanks.
He is already on the screen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Gadodia ji.
When I talked to him, he said we will wind up with the lunch. Immediately he said wind up with lunch from home.
Now, I have the honor of proposing a vote of thanks. The chairperson of this webinar, Dr. Ashok Saraf, today's speaker, Sri P. Purushottam, advocate, our former presidents, Sri P.C. Joshi and Sri Ganesh Purohit, seniors in this profession, Sri Venkatramani, Sri Mukul Gupta, our zone chairman, Sri Sandeep Gadodia ji, our sole lady member attending this webinar today, Srimati Manju Jha, vice presidents and former NEC members, Sri R.D. Kakra and Sri N.D. Saha, our zonal secretary, Sri Vivek Agarwal, and joint secretary, Sri Girdhar Dhelia, friends, and all members of the All India Federation of Tax Practitioners attending this webinar today. It has been an association of almost 35 years with Sri Purushottam, starting from 1985, when he first arrived in Orissa as the indirect tax person of Larsen Toubro, attending to works contract assessments. And I had first requested him to talk on a webinar for lawyers in Orissa. And finally, when I talked to Vivek Agarwal, he said, sir, forget Orissa right now. We'll have it for the Eastern Zone and on the AIFTP platform. So then I requested Mr. Purushottam again, and he immediately agreed. Of course, on GST, Mr. Purushottam will also agree that most of us present here appear before quasi-judicial authorities. Very rarely a person here appears before the High Court, excepting our learned seniors in this profession of immediate past presidents and a few other lawyers. So we would request you to give a talk again on a webinar again on GST provisions. And I think Air India will still allow you the grace again.
But how about principle of natural justice?
That will be provided to you. That Vivek will talk to you, Vivek Agarwal will talk to you and give it to you.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
So I now thank you for your very gracious address on various issues of VAT, works contract during VAT, and the present GST regime. As far as our chairman of this webinar is concerned, Dr. Saraf, his address was really good. And he basically told us how the courts behave right now and how the advanced ruling authorities behave right now in giving their orders. Most of us here and our dealers also are now bewildered as to what is to be done. Because advanced rulings today are shared in one group, and tomorrow you find another advanced ruling authority holding just the opposite of that. So you people, professionals are bewildered, forget the clients. Thank you, Saraf sir, for giving this chairman's address, indicating all the issues of GST. I would also like to thank here our zone chairman, Sri Gadodia ji, and zone secretary, Sri Vivek Agarwal, for organizing such a beautiful webinar on works contract. And I'll also request them to again talk to Mr. Purushottam and have a webinar on GST again, on GST issues again on works contract in the near future. And to all other participants, I thank you here again for attending this webinar and making it a success. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohanty ji. Before concluding today's webinar, I'll request our secretary, Vivek Agarwal, to announce the next webinars on a very burning issue nowadays, that is faceless assessment under Income Tax Act. Vivek, please take over. Vivek, are you there? Vivek, are you there?
Yeah, he's there.
Vivek, please unmute yourself. Vivek. I think he is gone somewhere. On 6th of coming month, 6th of October, we are going to organize a webinar on faceless assessment. And Vivek, come on the line. Vivek, take over. Hello. हेलो एक सेकंड में पूछ के बताता हूँ हेलो हेलो हाँ विवेक टेल unmute yourself. Vivek, tell. Hello, Vivek, are you hearing? Hello, Vivek.
I think he must be having lunch.
No, he is there on the screen. He is there on the screen. तुम्हारा आवाज नहीं आ रहा है विवेक। नहीं आ रहा है। आज 30 सितंबर। हाँ तो विवेक is not audible. So our next webinar on faceless assessment coming up with this webinar, which is the burning topic nowadays. So this is for all of your information. And now we conclude this meeting. Thanks, Mr. Purushottam. Thanks, Ashok Bhaiya. Thanks to all the past presidents, Mukulji, Sahaji, everybody. And hope to meet you on 30th again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Venkatramani, how are you? Bangalore.